All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Episode 26 of Campfire. And today, again, a very special day. I have the immense pleasure of having Carlos Chapa and Taylor Masiello with me. Both actually having lots in common, and we'll get into that. If you're joining, you're probably joining either on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook. And if you've actually watched this show before, you know that we are live and we're going to answer your questions. So don't hesitate to ask your question on any of those platforms. Use the chat, and we will actually see it. And Carlos or Taylor or myself will actually make sure that we answer it. We also have a neat small feature here that not we have. I thought actually other YouTubers would copy that feature, but I don't see many actually do that. There's kind of a risk involved.
Oh,
But the deal
Yes.
is you can join as well and be on the floor, be on the show with us, camera and microphone on, and just have a chat, ask your question. Um,
that's a cool
and yeah,
feature.
yeah, it's cool, right? I was like, everybody's gonna steal that one, but no, it hasn't happened that just yet. But yeah, so follow that link and you'll be able to join us, or the regular way, you can just ask your question here on chat. All right, so Carlos and Taylor, would you mind introducing you just briefly, like a small summary of what of yourself, and then where are you dialing from right now, and then we'll get into more questions about your background.
Okay.
How about you? You go for it, Taylor.
All right. My name's Taylor. I'm currently in kind of close to Portland, about 20 minutes south of Portland, Oregon. Uh, and yeah, I'm currently working in video game development at Respawn Entertainment.
And that's pretty cool. We'll talk about that. Great. How about you, Carlos?
Sure. I'm currently in El Paso, Texas, and I am currently a new camp instructor and currently on the search for a new role.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you. So just also to be clear with the audience, Taylor, you have a hot stop in 30 minutes. I think you're meeting with your manager. That's what you mentioned.
Yes.
Um,
I
and
just
so we'll,
started the new role this week.
yeah, actually, we're going to talk about that just now. And so you're going to leave us in 30 minutes. So we'll spend most of the first half, discussing with you and talking about your journey, and then we'll talk more with Carlos right after that. So let's actually start with that, Taylor, because you had an amazing news to share with all of us. I saw the post on LinkedIn. Great development for you. So, do you mind actually telling us a little bit about what just happened, or actually what you announced this week? I'm sure it happened earlier.
Yes, I officially, as of Tuesday this week, started my new role as a software engineer at Respawn for Electronic Arts, working on Apex Legends.
Isn't it the
Yeah,
dream
I have.
job for
It
everyone?
is. I'm repping it for the interview. So we got the Respawn dev. I got to represent the Apex Legends. So
Oh,
yeah,
this is
you could
brilliant.
say that I'm pretty excited.
That's cool. So, Respawn has actually one game I picked up actually recently because I never finished it. The Jedi. What's the name of that? What's the name of the game again?
Fallen Order.
The Jedi Fallen Order. It's a top rated game, and I think they just announced a follow up to that.
Oh yeah, Jedi Survivor.
That's right. It's going to be huge. Were you so? I did play Titanfall a little bit, but I mean I wasn't a big player of that. But I mean, this is tell me. I mean, tell us about how do you get into a company like that? Like, what did it take for you to get a job in such a dream company?
Absolutely. Well, they say everybody's road is different. My road was a unique path. I'm transitioning from a career in the military or military adjacent. I'm a veteran of the United States Army. And then after getting out of the military, I am a licensed FN, AMP aircraft technician. So I've been
Yeah.
working as that for the last several years. And I was in Afghanistan in April, May of 2020 when I took a spill off a 234 Chinook. And so after a couple of leg surgeries, I had to kind of rethink my career and really think about what I was going to do with my life. And New Camp, that's when I found New Camp, actually. I was healing up from surgery, and I I had already been on the radar of New Camp for a couple years, and it felt like the right time to jump in because I always was interested in game development, and I was like, well, maybe I could get in there in a few years or something. So I did at the time, there was no Python program. There was just the
Yeah.
web dev and the full stack mobile, and I did both. And so I started in December of 2020, I believe, and then graduated, I guess, about June or so the next
Yeah.
year. Yeah. And then I did graduate with honors. Ludo and I were just talking about that, which I was really proud about. I was very fortunate to immediately land a role, thank you, an internship last year, a summer internship with EchoBind, a cool coding agency, which we can chat about. And then
Yeah.
after that, I kind of was trying to figure out what to do. I knew my passion was game development, and I found a program called the Microsoft Software Systems Academy where I met Carlos, and I decided to go for it. I figured if I didn't get into this role or this a program, I could always just go for what I was going to do anyway, and I did get
Yeah.
in. And it was funny. I was going to be like, well, maybe in the future I'll go game dev. But my mentors in this program were like, this is your passion. Just go for it. And
Yeah.
so I did. I really focused Carlos is nodding. I definitely went for it. I was
Absolutely.
making, thank you. I was making projects left and right. I participated in my first game jam. I took an MVP to a polished demo, released it on itch.io, made some proceeds. I was able to donate it to a cause, K9 for Warriors. So it's been a wild ride, and that kind of led to where I'm at right now.
So you really, really, you worked strategically to get into the game development. You really
Oh yeah.
lined out everything you had to do, like attending a conference, working in the game space, being an indie gamer with yourself to some extent,
Yeah.
and then you got a job. So we're going to talk about this, but I want to go back in time. I want to, because you went very fast
Yeah. Quick
on
overview, right?
Yeah.
your military career, but I looked it up,
Yes.
and
Yes.
I want to ask you a question because you tell us about your when you started at West Point because you were one of 85 selected current duty soldier to attend West Point in 2013. And
Yes.
so if I read that right on your LinkedIn profile, it's about 1 in a million chance, which is about a 0.0085% chance of getting in. Can
Yeah.
you tell us a little bit about that? I mean,
Sure.
what brought you to the army? How did you get into West Point? What I mean, it seems to be for you something very that runs very deep, and you had a really strong conviction and ability to actually, join the army. Can you
Thank
tell
you.
us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So my father was in the army, and my uncle as well, and some other relatives, and so had it in my family. Grew up with it. Kind of something I always wanted to do. I always want to serve my country, and I wanted to be a pilot. That's where my dream, my passion for aviation came from. And it's funny, Ludo. I always had two parallel passions. I said when I was in my youth, gaming and aviation, and it was just like that fork in the road. And it's kind of fun.
Mhm.
I can experience both, but when I went to the army, because I was good at school, my father was like, you should try to be an officer. I want to be a pilot. And so I really wanted to go to West Point, but I knew that I wanted to go to the army no matter what. So I did something. I enlisted in the army when I was 17, which was the same thing my father did. Like it seems extreme, but my father
Wow.
did the same thing. So I followed
Yeah.
in his footsteps a little bit. It's called the split up program. So I actually enlisted when I was a junior in high school. You go to boot camp between junior and senior year, and then you're in the reserves for a year, and then you go active. So I did that. And since I was in the reserves, I was able to get you get your congressional, your senatorial. If you're in the military, it it's funny because actually I didn't realize this at the time. I was only 17. I thought it was like going to make it a little easier because I could get a Commodore like a different recommendation, but I didn't realize that when you're already in the military, it's actually much more difficult to get transferred to a station. So I was very, very fortunate that I got into the academy. I did get the official duty station transfer. I went there for a class of 2013. Unfortunately, I got injured during training, so I was unable to graduate from the academy, but the passion for aviation was still there. My passion to serve was still there. So like I said, once I got out of the military, I got my AMP, which are a license from the FAA to work on aircrafts as a technician because I love
Gotcha.
building and troubleshooting. And so I did that. I did that for a few years. I worked at GE, I worked at Honeywell, I worked at a few really great companies and some great experiences. And ended up, like I said, in Bagram as a Chinook contractor eventually. And and now I'm here, I guess.
Wow, that's really really impressive. And we have Vernon who joined us following the link. But Vernon, for me to bring you on the show, we're going to have to look at your. You're going to have to share your webcam and your mic so that we can see you there. So switch on your camera if you want to be on the show, Vernon. Um, so, well, I have to ask. You talked about aviation and flying planes. Did you see the latest Top Gun?
Oh, believe it or not, I actually haven't. I know it's crazy, but I have just been so nose down trying to get this. Now that I have the career, I have this huge backlog of
Yeah.
games and movies, shows. I mean, if I told you the Star Wars shows I haven't even seen yet, I have
Okay.
just been nose down. But unfortunately, no, I'm dying to see it though. It's on my
Oh,
list.
it's yeah. We actually went to see it 2 nights ago with the kids.
Oh,
IMAX
great. Nice.
screen. It's
Yeah.
beautiful,
I
brilliant.
love the first one. The first one's
Yeah,
one of
well,
my
it's
faves. So
yeah, it's a little bit of the same, just better. I
good.
thought it was better. Anyway, so wow, so that was extremely impressive. And so you joined the army, and then you bifurcated towards tech, given the circumstances. So you kind of dabbled into tech at that moment. Um,
Yeah, well, I mean, to just to break in real quick, basically, when I injured my leg in Afghanistan, the hope was that I would eventually be able to return to aviation. But just what
yeah.
happened, like day to day, I'm fine, but it was enough damage that I wouldn't really be able to perform at the same level. And so, they were really supportive, of course, the doctors and everything. And they basically said, listen, take the time and think
Mhm.
about your life and stuff. And like I said, it was kind of like a parallel passion. Game dev was something I always wanted to do, but since I enlisted and I obviously went the aviation route, it wasn't ever something I had time for. It was funny, I actually was in already going to like college courses for computer science online, like
Yeah.
taking a course here and there. I had done some HTML and CSS. Like I was always passionate. I had been watching game dev YouTubes on Unity. That's why I already knew about game jams for years. I have a journal when I was in aircraft time, my airtime, where I would be writing down game dev ideas, right? So that was like a dream of mine. So I figured I was like, well, I'm stuck in a bed anyway. Why not try to learn it, I guess?
Brilliant. So when you joined, so you joined New Camp, we talked about it. I think it was around December 2020,
I
something like
believe
that.
so. Yes, that sounds about right.
So when you joined, you were stuck in a bed.
Yeah, more. I mean, not 100% stuck in a
Yeah.
bed. I mean, I got back from Afghanistan in May of 2020. I had
Okay.
a ankle surgery in June and then a knee
Yeah.
surgery in October. So I mean,
Wow.
I wasn't like in bed anymore. Like I was
Yeah.
in physical therapy and stuff, but I was definitely still very much healing.
Wow. Okay. And during that time, so before you joined New Camp, you learned a few things. You said you attended a computer science course at a
Yeah,
university.
like, well, I was doing electives and I had taken it was this gosh, I don't remember the name, but like some free stuff
Yeah.
online that like I
Yeah.
said, I had done some HTML and CSS and I was like, "Ooh, look at me go."
Yeah.
I hadn't even touched JavaScript yet, and I'm so
Okay.
glad I did the web dev course, like
Yeah.
the fundamentals, because it was like, listen, you can skip ahead if you want, but like if you don't feel strong about your JavaScript fundamentals, you should take this course. And I was like, well, I've never done JavaScript, so I probably should take that course.
So
And I'm
let me
glad
ask
I
you
did.
this, because that course is very often, the
Hmm.
moment in time where people realize, oh shit, that's the oh shit moment. Like,
Hmm.
okay, is it gonna? Do I really want to pursue? Do I want to continue, or do I think like it's not for me? So, what was your state of mind after you completed the first 4 weeks? And for those who are listening who don't know, the first 2 weeks of that 4 weeks is easy. It's like you feel like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I got this. I got this.
Mhm.
HTML, CSS. I can see myself building stuff. And then we throw in, the last 2 weeks is JavaScript, and you're starting to manipulate the DOM, and it's like, oh my God, what am I? What did I get
Yep.
into?
Mhm.
How did you feel? So you didn't really practice beforehand. 4 weeks in, you just had 2 weeks of JavaScript. What was your state of mind?
I remember the JavaScript feeling kind of like there was two I would say two sides of the coin. I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, like I am not absorbing this. So I just didn't feel like I'm like, there's no way I could pick this up this fast. But the other side of the coin was it's kind of funny now, but it's very true. And I'm glad I just listened to the curriculum. It
Yeah,
specifically says in the videos and it specifically says in the content over and over, like, it's okay if it feels like you don't get it. Just do the exercise, just follow along. Like you're learning, even if you don't think you're learning.
yeah,
And that, I guess I remember, and then if I remember correctly, my next module was Bootstrap in my course. And then after that, we started doing React. And I remember once I got into React, I remember being like a little bit thrown off. But once I got into React Native, because of
yeah.
that other, I was like just jamming with it, right? So yeah, it does build just like it says.
Yeah, it's repetition. It's time actually. It's the
Yeah,
time for your mind to internalize the concepts that you're using, and the more you use them, the easier and more familiar they become. Um,
absolutely.
there's a say in the industry which is trust the process, and I don't really like that say because it feels like, hey, just don't ask questions. That's
Right.
yeah, but actually, it is a true statement. You have to trust the process a little bit, because yeah, you're going to realize that actually it's kind of working that way. So okay, so you were still committed. You kind of enjoyed it. So you didn't have you were able to learn full time, right? I'm guessing
Yes,
that
that
was great.
definitely helps. So I'll tell
Yeah.
you a couple things I did to supplement that
Yes.
definitely I
Yes.
think helped. In addition, first, like you said, repetition is so important. So like just like first building stuff, even, and this is something I wish I did more earlier.
Yeah.
Fortunately, like I'm sure once we get into my internship, I had a great mentor who really taught me about this, and it really drove home that. And I think that's like Carlos is nodding his head. Projects, projects, projects. Even if you think like I don't understand this, even if you're literally just following somebody else doing something to get started, like you said, the repetition, and then GitHub. I don't know the current curriculum because again, it's been a little bit, but when I did it at the time, that was like it was like optional. There was a little bit that
Yeah.
gave some information about it, but I was like, I knew because again, I had been on YouTube and stuff like that for software dev for a long time, how important GitHub or how universal it was, and I kind of understood the concept of it. So I forced myself to learn it. And I'll be honest, that was a little bit of a challenge, but I'm so glad because I do. I have my repos all the way back from Bootstrap. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool to see, and then any possible employer can literally see from New Camp to where I'm at now with the stuff I've built. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, a lot of, and then the final thing I would say, if you don't understand something, at least for me, like definitely reach out to your instructors and everything, but also like don't freak out. There's so much stuff on the internet. Like if you
Yeah.
don't understand, like if you're going over like function and it just isn't syncing for some reason, like Google it and watch some YouTube videos. I'll be honest. Sometimes I felt like I was like, man, this just isn't sinking in, but it is at repetition. On some of those videos they say, I think you said this, Ludo, like it's almost like it is like a cycle. Like you go through like, oh, I don't understand it. Oh, I kind of get it. And then after you learn something, you go, oh, I don't understand it. And it's just a cool cycle of learning.
You
You
shared
never
with me
stop
something.
learning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. You never
You
stop
never stop
learning, and
learning.
Mhm.
you shared something while we were waiting for the show to start. In part of that cycle is looking at the code you produced a year ago and looking at it and saying like,
Yeah.
this is crap. I could
This is
do so much
so
better.
embarrassing.
But
I'm
this
just
is,
glad they can see the growth.
yeah, exactly right. I mean,
Yeah.
this is also how. I mean, first, I would encourage every developer who actually out. When you have self doubt, when you have that imposter syndrome, look at the code you produced 6 months or a year ago, and it's going to make you feel so much better because you're going to realize how much you've made progress and how much you've actually evolved as a developer. Um, okay, this is great. So let's talk about you a little bit, Carlos, because I mean, Taylor, we still have you for about 20 minutes. It's 15 minutes now. So Carlos, how did you get into development? I understand your path, your journey is quite different from Taylor's one.
Sure. I was in the U.S. Army, same as Taylor. Um, I got out first contract, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. It took quite a while to stumble upon a a career path, but I always had a passion for tech, and slowly started to learn web development. And it was a lot of stop and go. I would go like a lot of like full on sprint and break and then full on sprint. And now I know the best path is just like slow incremental growth and just keep
Mm.
the growing going instead of like full on sprints and then burnout. Um, and once I felt confident enough with the fundamentals and I felt that I could actually start applying for roles, New Camp was the first role I applied for to be an instructor. And it's kind of funny that being self-taught to teaching, um, my I think this is a hack that if
Yeah.
you are a looking for your first role, probably look for a teaching role in a coding boot camp because then you could like use their curriculum and like learn, you
Yeah, there you
know.
go.
You get it for free.
Yeah,
Actually,
like you get their curriculum for free and get to
Nice
let's
like learn
yeah,
bonus.
from them. So and then you
Here's
get
what people don't know is the very first day you join us as an instructor, we open up the whole learning management system for you, everything we have to offer for free. And I hope we're not going to have more people hacking into it, but that's pretty much what happens. You have access to everything.
That's
So
awesome.
there's a ton of coincidence between you two. So the first one is you both are related to New Camp, Taylor as a student, Carlos as an instructor, and yet that's not where you met. So where did you meet?
we met in a program called the Microsoft Software and Systems Academy, which is provided by Microsoft, but is for veterans.
Yeah.
And
And active
we
duty service
yeah,
transition.
yeah, active duty service member, veterans. And the first day we, introduced yourselves, and I introduced myself as a, coding boot camp instructor at New Camp, and we had Taylor, who was a student, and that was like an awesome coincidence. So we had like some experience in tech already, or familiar with web technologies, or in general programming.
Mhm.
And the call that you attended, was it in, did they do that in person or was it still online?
Yeah, so
It,
it was fully virtual.
Yeah.
It was basically it's actually more specifically it's a skill bridge program. A lot of companies do have those.
Oh
It's
yeah.
more geared towards active duty service transitioning. So, that's actually out of the 14 of us in our cohort, we were the only two veterans actually. Everybody else was active duty, and it's a 17-week program focused on building professional development, like LinkedIn and stuff like that, how to interview, brand, elevator pitches, stuff like that. And also, of course, the flip side to that, the technical instruction, which was major. It was the cloud application development program, high emphasis in like advanced C sharp,
Yeah.
obviously, Azure stuff like that. It was a great opportunity, and the mentorship from Microsoft, again, it was fully Microsoft funded, completely free for the veterans or active
Wonderful.
duty people in the program, and the mentors from Microsoft were amazing. Helped with helped me so much.
Absolutely.
Whiteboarding, algorithms, date, it was a great program to get into. So any veterans or active duty people out there, Microsoft Software Systems Academy, MSSA, Google it, look it up.
And let me just, Krista is making a joke here. Yeah. I hope not. Actually, I do, and I don't. Um, but yeah, and we have actually, we're building a partnership with, I mean, it's not necessarily exactly a partnership, but they have, Microsoft has several programs for,
Hmm.
apprenticeship, internships. This one, actually, I remember talking to the program manager when I was working at Microsoft.
Oh,
But
that's
it's been
awesome.
around for a while, and it's a
Mhm.
fantastic program. Um, can you tell us about, how do you get into this program? What is their application experience like? Is there coding test, or I mean, what do you need to show or prove in order to get in?
Sure. So basically, it was pretty straightforward. It was like go to this orientation, do this application. I'll say this to anybody applying: they have very strict like timeline windows, right?
Yeah,
So they'll say you can't apply till this date. We have to apply between these dates, and if you miss the cutoff, you miss the cutoff, right? So make sure you
mhm.
have your documentation ready to go. The website, of course, explains all that. After you apply, there is like a test, right, that you have to take. It's the MTA. Carlos probably knows the number. You remember?
Oh yeah, it's a
No, I don't.
Software
certification
for
test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
yes, software fundamentals, and
yeah,
so study up for that. Well, you can retake it. They give you one for free, but if you do retake it, there's like weeks you have to wait, and there's a time crunch. So try to pass it. If
yeah.
you pass it, you get the interview, and then hopefully an offer.
That's awesome. So let's
Yeah.
continue with you, Taylor, because you're gonna leave us in about 7 minutes. So
Then it'll
you
be all
were,
Carlos.
yeah. So you were both in that program. That lasted how long, by the way? How long did it last?
17
17
weeks.
weeks.
17 weeks. It's a pretty good, yeah, it's good length.
It's
Um,
very long, very detailed. You are definitely drinking from a fire hose there,
yeah.
but it's
And,
well worth it.
and so so I'm looking. So when did you get your first job, Taylor? And I'm looking at you were an intern in EcoBind. Was it before, after the Microsoft
It
program?
was before the Microsoft program. So I was very
Okay.
fortunate. Literally, almost to the day after I graduated New Camp, I started this internship at EchoBind, which is a coding agency, fully remote. I was very fortunate. We were talking earlier. So for at least when I went to New Camp, the honors, in order to get that on your certificate, you would submit like a project, and then a certain number of people were selected. And it was funny enough, the project for EchoBind, they assigned me something to build, and since I had already built that for my internship, I also submitted it. So, what is it they say? Like lazy people, you find the most efficient path. No,
Yeah, I don't think you're lazy, but yeah, you can
no,
use
thank
it
you.
if you want.
No, I work pretty hard. I definitely do.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, so you had that project and you got the honor certification or certificate, I should say, from New Camp. And actually, it's the same. It's still the same
Cool.
for existing graduations or current graduations. Um, about 10% of all graduates actually are awarded the honor certificate, and it's exactly the same approach. We actually invite you and ask you to go the extra mile and present your project, record a
Mm.
video, pitch it pretty much. It's a great
Oh yeah.
rehearsal,
Sorry,
right?
I forgot that I did that. Yes, I had to make the video. That wasn't something
That's
I had
right.
to do for EchoBind.
You did a video,
I
and
forgot.
I'm sure we can still find it on YouTube, by the way. It's probably out there.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're looking back at that code and you're
I'm
like,
like,
yeah,
don't look at that app. It's so embarrassing. It does one thing. Just kidding.
oh, that makes me want to check it out on YouTube right now, but I won't. I won't.
Okay.
So yeah, and so 10% of graduates are getting it, and so this is brilliant. So you got the internship, and then you got into the Microsoft Academy, and then what? So you're graduating from the academy. How, like, what happened after that, and when did you get that position at Respawn then, or what did you
At
do in
Respawn?
between?
Did you say at Respawn or at EchoBind? I'm sorry.
It's Respawn. Like, tell us
Oh,
about
when
the
did I get
timeline.
that?
From
Yes, yes.
yeah.
So basically, the timeline's actually pretty interesting. This will be a great thing to end on, probably. So, funny enough, part of MSSA is, like I said, the professional development. So they will bring in other companies, like hiring partners. So you
Mhm.
have an interview with Microsoft. Again, it's a phenomenal program. So they bring in these hiring partners to do presentations, and they always tell you, hey, if you want to, work with this company, maybe think of a good question or something to follow up with and stuff. Networking. And so
Yeah.
we had a presentation by EA, and so everybody knew that was like, oh, this is Taylor. Like, let's see what she's gonna do, right? And so we had been practicing our elevator pitches, and I figured, what better time to make an elevator pitch than right now? So I, and this is a meeting with like all 4 cohorts. There's like, I don't know, maybe 75 to 80 people with the
Yeah.
presenters, and so, oh man, the timeline was great. A little tangent here. The project I was making for MSSA, or the project I mentioned to you, the game that I took to a demo called Fool's Gold, I had been posting updates on LinkedIn. So the all these cohorts had seen this. So that context
Yeah.
is kind of relevant. So anyway, so I raise my hand, they pick on me, and I ask a question. I kind of bring up my game, and I kind of introduce myself and stuff. I'm like, I just made this game during the game jam as an MVP. I'm taking it to a demo. What stuff can I do? And the 3 people were super great. I don't know if I'll give them the shout out, but anyways, they were at EA. Cullen and Kevin and Clayton, and they were awesome. Shout out to you guys. Thank you. That was a great presentation. And so, anyways, they were chatting, and while they were answering my question, like the whole chat blew up with like people from the whole program being like, "Oh, Fool's Gold! Yeah, I love that game. I can't wait till she releases it so I can play it." And I'm just sitting there like glowing, like, "Oh my gosh, this is awesome!" And so I followed up with the people from EA. Lots of moves down the line, and just so everybody knows, it wasn't just like a one-stop shop. You can ask Carlos, I was interviewing with multiple game dev companies
Yeah.
for months and months, and
Activision Blizzard.
I got a lot of rejections, a lot of, Activision Blizzard, and some other ones as well. But anyways, I was going through this process, and it finally worked out. So yeah, Respawn, I was super excited about. I'm very, very stoked for Apex Legends. Like I said, it's a bit of a dream come true. So that finally happened. It almost coincided. I think I officially accepted the offer almost the day of our graduation or the day before. It was like almost
Wow.
perfect timing.
So
How
you
it worked
always
out.
got a job at the end of every graduation. Like,
So far,
it's
every graduation, I have a
amazing.
job.
That's huge. But you know
Thank
what?
you.
What you've described here is you apply to different, game development companies, but networking, meeting with
Mm,
those folks in person, right?
huge. That's what
That's
that's what
that's
made
the
this
that's
happen.
what
Yeah,
that's the difference, right? It's
and hard work and the projects, of course.
obviously,
Yeah,
Absolutely.
obviously,
yeah.
yeah. But that's
Thank
that's a
you.
big deal. Like, and we tell that over and over again to people graduating. Just don't send resumes at the wazoo, like 500 applications on LinkedIn. You may be lucky, but most of the time you won't be lucky that way. You really want to work on your networking. You really want to reach out, make yourself known, and kind of help people see you through the crowd. And that's very much what you did. And it's actually crazy to know that all four people, like the four cohorts, 80 people,
It
kind
was
of
crazy, Ludo, when
were
that
you were
chat
your
linked
biggest
up.
fans, right?
I
It's
was like, I couldn't have planned that. It was amazing. And I want to give another shout out to just
yeah.
the Apex team that gave me the shot, Scott and Roger. Thank you for giving me my opportunity. And I'm going to work real hard.
That's awesome. Well, and I know Taylor, you have to go. Really, really appreciate the time that you spent here. Anyone check Taylor's LinkedIn profile if you want to say hi.
Yeah.
Or on
Thank you to
Slack.
everybody in the chat, real quick. Thank you
Yeah,
to everybody. So I tried to say thank you to everybody. I think I messed that up, but thank you
yeah,
for
you
all the
did a private
congrats.
chat. Like,
I know.
tell us and I saw it.
I know. I was like, oh, whatever.
That's okay. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Taylor.
Bye.
All right, let's do this. How is it? Yeah, perfect. So, Carlos, let's actually do a follow up. So, you were in the same cohort as Taylor. Can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about what brought you to the Microsoft Academy? How did you actually get in there? What did you think about this? And let's talk about what you learned during that time at the Microsoft Academy.
Sure. What really brought me in was even when I had a, a few cohorts underneath my belt teaching at New Camp, still felt like I wasn't a dev yet. The imposter syndrome is very, very real. Even though one thing I got to say is that if you make it, if you get a role, and if you made any sort of accomplishment, no matter how small, that's great because you got to look at like the time scale of your growth and how your journey where it's gone. And joining the MSSA, it helped me round out being a dev. It helped me learning C sharp, learning a new programming
Yeah.
language, learning backend technologies. I was been mainly a front end dev with React and Bootstrap. So learning Azure or Azure, excuse me, um, it really helped me round myself out as dev. The professional development was priceless. Being able to network, putting yourself out there, is immeasurable. You can't expect people to find you if you don't put yourself out there.
Yeah, no, totally. So I want to talk about something that we have in common, uh, which is a passion for the blockchain and Web3. The difference is you are actually very deep in it. You're probably programming in it, and I don't, and I miss that. But so tell us a little bit about your passion for blockchain. What do you do with it? I mean, how are you approaching it? Are you working on projects right now for blockchain? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think my passion for blockchain technologies um, really didn't start. I have always had an interest in like Bitcoin and the technology behind it, but
Mhm.
not really programming in it until I um, entered a hackathon, Ethereum Denver,
Yeah.
2021, and that's where you build decentralized applications for the Colorado government. They
Oh,
have
really?
bounties.
The
Yes.
government was sponsoring
Oh
it.
yeah.
Oh,
They every
wow.
year they held a hackathon in Denver, Colorado,
Nice.
for Ethereum building, and that was during the pandemic, so I had to do it virtually. And being able to talk to people in the space and see the passion, like being able to build a system where you don't have to worry about the dogmas of um finance or traditional technology. These are people of pure passion building the world they want to build,
Wow.
and that really inspired me to continue building blockchain applications.
So what did you build during that hackathon? Can
it
you
was
share?
a it was a simple voting app.
Oh, wow.
So it
Yeah.
was in general, this is actually really nice for if anyone's interested in the blockchain space, um, or using like Solidity for the Ethereum blockchain, is basically you have a front end So mainly React right now, React or Next, and you're communicating with a blockchain backend, and it really is just connecting the two
So
together.
so that's really interesting, and I have not spent enough time in that space. But what you're describing is, so actually you the front end is React and Next or whatever JavaScript you want, I guess. And you should really consider your backend being the blockchain itself. So it's not a Node.js, or it's not Express, it's not,
Right.
it's you just from the front end to the blockchain directly.
Yes, you could use a you could like use Node
Yeah,
to help with that, but really where all your you're not storing data on a
yeah,
traditional SQL database. You're
that's
using
right.
the blockchain for that.
That's right.
And that's where the unstoppable code comes from in the blockchain, where like once the code is out there, um essentially you could tear down the front end, but the code on the blockchain still exists and can
Yeah.
be forked and used all over again. And that's why blockchain development is pretty hard, because you got to thread the needle really well to get it right the first time. Because once like you have a bug, you're losing potentially millions, or
Oh,
you're getting hacked. You like if there's a vulnerability. Recently there's a lot of issues with I guess one of the most common ones was the DAO hack, which the original Ethereum hack, which lost I think like 57 like
yeah.
56 million ether, which is like ridiculous now, but
So
it was a
no,
simple
it's
bug.
but I got you. So, and again, I'm probably like many out there. Like I'm fascinated by the space, but I haven't spent enough time really understanding it. But I think I'm getting it better now. Like when you're shipping your code, like your you're talking about the smart contract right here, right?
Correct.
When you're shipping it, all of a sudden it gets propagated to millions of nodes. But fixing that code is not like just fixing it and republishing it. Like once it's out there and that it has a life of its own, you cannot patch the code that you've pushed already. Is that correct? I mean, you
There,
or
that is correct.
is that
Essentially,
yeah,
once you have the finished contract, of course, you're gonna have a development contract. So you're
yeah,
gonna be the live contract and a development contract, like traditionally you would have in a normal like
yeah,
Git repository.
yeah,
Um, the thing is, that's where like the idea of forks would
that's
come
right.
in, where it's like you would migrate all liquidity or all the code over to a different contract. So that's going to be the live code.
I see.
Um,
So when
but
they talk about hard fork, that means like all the nodes that were running that before kind of are useless now, and they all need to move to the next version. It's a big pain in the ass, isn't it?
it absolutely is, and I think that's why a lot of there's a huge demand for them.
Yeah,
Knowing security, it's security is a huge thing in the blockchain space. Just knowing the bugs, and I think that's where a lot of the learning comes from. Solidity is a very I would say it's very JavaScript like.
uh-huh.
It's object orientated. It the syntax is almost the same, really. You just have to deal with types, which you'll learn really quick. But the real learning is making sure you don't. There's if you go on like the like learn Ethereum books, it's like almost half of it is just on security, on making sure
Wow.
you um, there's the right amount of balance,
Yeah.
or making sure a function completes. Because what happens is like if you since contracts can communicate with each other, so
Mhm.
if one contract doesn't complete, someone could basically say, "Hey, I want to take out $100. I want to take out another $100," and it would just recursively
Oh my God.
drain the
Yeah.
balance, and that's reentrancy. And just that's one of the most basic ones, but it it's a lot to learn, and it's really interesting just what people are building in that space.
Crazy. I can't wait to have time to kind of dig deeper into it. Hey, we have Blake who's sharing his experience. Thank you for sharing that. New camp is awesome. Graduating this weekend. Congratulations. Saturday is my last scheduled time with the instructor. So you're probably gonna we have a graduation party on the 13th. That's probably gonna be when we celebrate your graduation, Blake. Congrats again. So That's really fascinating. So, can you tell us? I'm looking at your LinkedIn now. You've had a ton of different experiences since you left the army. Can you tell us a little bit about, you've started as a freelancer, you were like in the live music project, I can see. Can you
Hmm.
tell us a little bit about that freelance experience and what did you do there?
Sure. Yeah. Before I actually became an instructor,
Yeah.
I did some freelance work for the Live Music Project. Was a nonprofit in Seattle, I believe, which provides music um, for communities. And they were mainly React uh, uh, a, a React website they needed to
Uh-huh.
rebuild, and yeah, getting that experience in like a team environment. We had like weekly stand-ups or bi-weekly stand-ups of like where we are, like who could take what. We had a ticketing system, so it was really good experience. Getting that experience working in a professional management environment. Uh, yeah, and
Yeah,
then
you,
I
you learned you learned the additional layer of developing in a team, picking tickets, resolving those tickets, pushing it
a
to
lot of
the
agile
yeah.
development. That's where I really learned a lot about like project management.
Yeah.
Um, so working in that professional environment definitely helped out a lot.
And so how was it being a freelance? I mean, there's a lot of, students, and you probably see that in the people that are in your class. Some people really want to explore the freelance route. How was it for you? Like being a freelance, would you recommend it? What would you say about it?
It once again like it comes with if you're going to be freelance, it's going to come with a lot of responsibilities.
Mhm.
Essentially, it's all on you
Yeah.
to be, and it is harder in a lot of ways, but it's once again you're balancing out, like you choose your own hours, you choose your own job of where you want to be. If you want to break into freelance, honestly, I think just going uh it might sound weird, but like Fiverr, and just
Yeah.
building that
Um,
repository, GitHub repository, um, putting yourself in GitHub. I think GitHub is not GitHub, excuse me. LinkedIn is very important.
yeah.
Knowing your services, what you learn. Um, I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that you need to definitely put yourself out there. I'm kind of the I'm not old, but when the internet was still young, I was taught as a kid, do not like be careful of who you are, talk to the internet.
Oh yeah.
And now it's kind of like you got to be careful of who you talk on the internet and putting yourself out there. But now it's like you got to market yourself.
That's right.
You got to go hard on putting your digital
It's a
stuff out
great
there.
point. Yeah, we are taught to, I mean, stay close. I mean, close to the chest. Don't engage with strangers. And you're right. Finding a job though nowadays is really putting yourself out there as much as possible. Hey, David is really thankful for you sharing all those tips around blockchain. I
Oh,
mean,
no
really
problem.
fascinating stuff. And then actually, we have a question here that actually I'll ask you if you have any ideas about how to answer it. Actually, you do because you are primarily a self-taught developer. So,
Hmm.
how did you learn? Like, what? How did you find your way to? An ocean of free stuff out there, and you can drown in it pretty quickly. How did you manage to learn at the pace that you need to learn? And you talked a little bit about going on sprints versus learning regularly the same, I mean, at the right pace. How did you manage all that? Where did you find the curriculum? How did you know what to learn and at which pace?
Um, I think a lot of the I had a luckily I had a mentor that
Yeah.
helped me get to where I am today. I'll shout him out, Olaf Winkwitz.
So
Definitely.
Olaf is a very good friend of New Camp and myself. He's been with New Camp for a while. I think he invited you to join as well as an instructor. He's interestingly as well. He has an indie game company,
Yes.
and so he's very deep into gaming as well. And he was on the show. We had a campfire with Olaf, so check him out. But yeah, hey, if
But
you're listening to us, Olaf, thanks for being with us. So please go ahead.
Yeah. So really, what I found was Google is your best friend here.
Mhm.
I think um, a lot of the material is out there. So this might sound really vague, but if you're looking for a course, you could Google, and you could probably find it. Um, Books, same way. I have, uh, I got the React books.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Really,
Hey,
it's
show it closer to the show it in
sure,
the frame because we couldn't see actually exactly.
sure. It's React Explained by Zach Gordon.
Hold on. Let me
Oh, there
actually.
you
There you
go.
go. Here you go. Yeah. Right. Explain. Okay.
Um, all all the information that you need is really out there on the internet. Um, I Out of respect for New Camp, I won't say the P word,
What
which
is the
is
P word?
piracy. I will not. The New Camp does not.
Yeah.
I won't
Yeah.
speak for New Camp, but of course, just the information is out there for you to learn. Um, all that information you would need. I think Udemy is probably like a lifesaver for me.
Yeah.
If I ever lost my Udemy account, I would cry.
So
Um,
that's a great point. So there's a very few people that have finished courses on Udemy. But that being said, how do you use Udemy in a way that works for you? Why is it so important for you to keep it? And how do you use it?
sure. How I use Udemy is basically I find a course that I'm interested in.
Mhm.
So you could go with React or blockchain, and a lot of it is segmented in parts of like
Yeah.
a certain type of technology. So kind of similar how you would use New Camp. It's where we're teaching, let's say in JavaScript, or teaching about functions. Well, here we're learning about functions, and then you start deep diving into like, okay, what is a function? What are the different types of functions? What could you do with them? Like, and that's how I generally structure my Udemy courses. Is I'm not there to sprint them out. I take them
I see.
slow,
Yeah. Yeah.
really absorb as much information you can from them. Because everything there is like a curriculum. They want to, and a good Udemy course will structure their course in a logical manner. So everything built on top of the other.
Mhm.
So once you get a grasp of a certain topic, uh, then you can move on to the next one and really start taking notes. My learning system. Oh my. If we get into ever knowledge management, like I anything about, have you ever heard of like Zettelkasten before?
No, what is that?
Zettelkasten is a type of knowledge management system where you have like it, cards or notes that like link to each other. So it's kind of like having your own wiki based system.
Yeah, I
So
see.
if you ever have a whenever you take notes, you're basically segmenting out the information and basically making permanent notes for reference. So
I
you
see.
have like permanent notes, literature notes, and then you continue on learning from there. So
Notion is pretty popular in that space as well. Very much
yes.
wiki heavy. I see. Hey, there's a question from Krista, but I will say, Krista, which course are you starting on June 20th? Actually, let me look it up. Which one do we start? Actually, I can do that. Hold on. On the 20th, we are starting. Let me check that out. So you must be. Oh, so you're starting with the 4 weeks. Oh, we lost your
Oh no,
camera.
I'm still here. Excuse me.
Okay, okay.
Just
Um,
one moment.
So, Krista, you're probably referencing the 4 weeks bootcamp, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that starts on the 20th. What I will say to you is start with JavaScript. Uh, do as much JavaScript as you can ahead of time. What you're going to experience is the first 2 weeks of the bootcamp are going to be relatively easy. It's going to be HTML and CSS. Then the last 2 weeks, it's going to be about JavaScript. The more you can prepare for that, the better. So start with the fundamentals of JavaScript, or I would say even the fundamentals of programming. So learn about loops and different ways of looping, for loops, while loops. Learn about parameters, learn about functions, learn about variables, learn about conditions, true, false conditions. I think that's going to help you tremendously as you hit the last 2 weeks of that. Yeah, as you hit the last.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
and
yeah. Once they hit JavaScript, that's where people start to panic or start to realize like, okay, this is like a lot harder
that's right.
than it
Uh,
is.
Don the developer always suggests. I think that he says the first 7 chapters of Essential JavaScript. So if you're into reading books, that will be a good option as well. Essential JavaScript, that will help. But yeah, and it's going to help not just for the first 4 week bootcamp. It will help as you hit React and React Native. By the way, I have a great update, great news. So we have finally updated our React and React Native curriculum. We're seeing the score going through the roof right now. The satisfaction of our students really, really being super high. Hooks are in. State management is still there. But yeah, I mean, we have really happy with those changes to the full stack curriculum and what we've done with React and React Native. So that's a good update. All right, let's go back to you, Carlos. So you did that freelance project, and then you actually spent a good amount of time working with Rook TKO. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What is Rook TKO, the company? What did you do there?
Sure, Wook TKO is Olaf's gaming company. Um,
Oh, that's Olaf's. Of
yeah,
course. I
yeah.
didn't
So
I didn't make the connection. Well, tell us about it then. Tell us,
sure.
let's
Rook
plug it.
TKO.
Plug Rook TKO.
Yeah, Rook TKO is a indie gaming company by Olaf Minkwitz. He's currently building a game called Runner, which is
That's
a
right.
ninja runner, and it's pretty great. I think they're about to go in early beta. I think like in a couple months.
Yeah.
They use Game Maker, so that's the first time I ever got some experience using Game Maker. So another object oriented um, programming language. It's proprietary to Game Maker, but it's more programming experience. Like there, I learned basically data flow. So I think sometimes when you're learning to code, um, you lose sight of where, like, I guess the George Bush thing is like the internet is like a bunch of pipes. Well, same thing with code. Code is like data moving from one place to the other, getting used, getting mutated or not mutated. That's a bad thing, but like getting changed or getting updated. Um, and yeah, so having to deal with a certain state, the state of like where the runner is, if it gets hit.
Yeah.
It was a great experience.
Oh, I can
Working
imagine.
for him.
I almost want to. I see that. So on Rook TKO website or LinkedIn, there's actually a bunch of videos. I can see it now. It's a platform, right? It's a platform game. It's pretty cool.
Yes, like in the runner genre. So he's like,
Yeah, yeah. Brother John. Okay, cool. So you worked. So you are also a game developer then. That's pretty cool.
I like the
Um,
fans. I guess in some ways.
and so
I dabbled.
yeah, that's right. So and Juan is saying probably to help Krista as well. You can start back to Udemy. Put the $10 or $5, whatever you are able to actually buy it. Cold Steel is a really well renowned instructor. That space it can help. Don't worry if you don't finish it. Chances are you won't. But yeah, start with JavaScript. That's going to help.
I think if I were to plug one that I
Yeah.
really liked was a creator called Wes Boss.
Mm.
And his so WESBOS.
Yeah.
Um, he has a really good web development fundamentals. So just basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and goes into React. So beginner React and advanced React.
Cool.
And just being able. I think the thing is, if don't worry about knowing everything all at once. The idea is to get context, because right now your knowledge, if you really think about it, like the fog of war in a game, like your knowledge, you have a small amount of knowledge, but once you like start branching out and started learning like the nuances of JavaScript or React, eventually you'll start to illuminate, and then eventually that becomes like your actual knowledge. So
Mhm.
really, like, learn to get some context of things, so it doesn't actually like, you're not in like deer in the headlights mode when you're learning. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, this is, I've seen this before, and now it could actually maybe start to like settle in once you have like an instructor explain it, or you're reading it over it again.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Cothin is saying, yes, ResBoss is great. Hey, let's talk about you as a new camp instructor now. We haven't actually talked about it that much. So, and I understand Olaf kind of, co-opted you in. You've been teaching for us for how long now?
I started teaching in November of 2001, and
Oh,
then
so okay, cool.
yeah, or 22,
2021.
excuse me, November,
Yeah,
November 20, and then all of 2001.
that's right.
Not 2001,
2021.
2021.
Yeah, I know.
COVID
Well,
has messed with time.
yeah.
We're on
So,
COVID time.
and you've been teaching Bootstrap mainly, right, at this time?
Yes,
Yeah.
mainly Bootstrap, a React course, and a fundamental web fundamentals course.
Okay. So, can you share with us your observations of your students? How, like, who do you see joining your classes? What is their profile? Any observation that you can share with us, and maybe words of encouragement or inspirational. I love to hear from you what you're seeing, in your classes.
W- Basically, I see like a lot of people trying to find different careers.
Hmm.
I had um, I had a student that was a musician that wanted to break into tech. I had one where was a teacher,
Yeah.
wanted to break into tech. A lot of people in transition in their lives, and it is a huge risk to gamble on something you're not familiar with.
Hmm.
And so a lot of these people are go-getters. They're brave. You know, they they're passionate about what they want to learn, and um, all my cohorts have been a pleasure to teach. I
It's
think
funny,
that a
we see
lot.
a lot. We see a lot of teachers and musicians, and actually every time, and I've had several of musicians on the show, and they all tell me that they find that music is a similar experience to learn than coding.
Mhm.
And I'm not a musician myself. I wish I was, but that analogy has always really surprised me. But yeah, I mean, they
I
really, like, if you're a good musician, you actually could become a good coder as well.
I would say that if you're actually really good with languages as well,
Yeah, I
I
guess.
think
Yeah, that's pretty much.
um,
Yeah.
if being able to it's parsing like language, like trying to
Mhm.
get like that logic. I think that sometimes a lot of students try to like um they they want to like, if everything could be programmed in English or their
Yeah.
native language, it would be so much easier. They could just like, I want this to happen, and then it does it. Maybe eventually when AI gets here, but um really it is trying to like problem solve uh
That's
a
true. It's very
language.
true.
So I think
Yeah.
musicians, they kind of like, sight reading or music
Yeah.
as a language of its own.
And so let me ask you more questions about your students. Where do you see them struggle the most?
Where do I see them struggle the most? I think I see them struggle um when they get frustrated.
Mm,
Um I think sometimes they're on a bug for like especially in Bootstrap, where it might not be obvious of it's why like something is not justified or
oh
right in
yeah.
the center. It's mainly because they forgot a curly bracket, or they forgot like a forward slash, and it's kind of like, well, that felt silly, but
Yeah.
really it's I think you get kind of your eyes get you glaze over the code, and you kind of get frustrated with yourself, like, this is like, I know this is going to be really silly, like a silly bug, and they're kind of like nervous to ask. And
Yeah.
realistically, I think sometimes you have to be willing to be vulnerable and ask yourself questions, because that feeling is never going to leave. I don't think there has been a time in my career where I felt that I knew everything or when I had to like, I felt bad asking for help. Because if you're
Yeah, no,
asking for
it's
help
great
and you're
too.
drowning,
Yeah, you have
like
to.
you have to.
You
Like
have to.
that's
And here's the thing as well that I would add. First, it's almost certain that the very first frustrating experience is going to be a semicolon that's missing. Like, I guarantee that's going to be it. And I guarantee you're going to spend 3 hours, 4 hours, and you're not going to know or understand what's going on. And it's a semicolon that's missing. The other thing I guarantee is if you show me that code, I'll find that semicolon issue in about 20 seconds. And that's actually the learning curve, which is that may be the very first thing that's going to frustrate you. And you're going to spend hours at first having to deal with it. But over time, you're going to be so trained to actually look out for those. That's the very, you're going to find them almost instantly. And I've been in many situations like that where, student is so frustrated, like, I don't know what's going on. I'm looking at it and I say, that's it. That's the semicolon dress, like line 13. It's like, what?
yeah.
Right? You've seen that, right? And that's the thing. You're like, it's not because it's frustrating you now that it's going to continue to frustrate you all the way. Things are going to change. Things are going to evolve. You're going to learn more. You're going to be more trained to spot those things. And actually, over time, you don't do those mistakes anymore. Um, so, hey, and we have Juan saying, hey, musician for over 20 years. Yeah, I
There
agree.
you go.
And yes, and the worst bugs of all are CSS bugs. I do agree with that. These are the hardest to debug until you practice and you kind of know, okay, how do I justify a div again, or how do I center text in a div? That's you'll always look up for that. Like I do, I still to this day Google how do I center text in a div. I don't know who doesn't. So anyway, hey, we're actually at the end of the show. Carlos, it was a real pleasure to have you join us. Taylor as well. Taylor is with our boss right now, playing video games, I hope, or actually working. That's actually the same for her. Um, Thank you for being an instructor with us. Thank you for everything that you do for the students. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you for everyone joining us today. We're going to be back next week. I actually don't know who the host is, who the guest is going to be, but I'm sure it's going to be fantastic. Have a great weekend and take care, everyone.
Thank you so much.